Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Stuart, and we again have Larry with us, which we're very fortunate to have tonight. All kinds of things going on behind the scenes, and we got a number of things we got to talk about. Trump is one of the big issues. Putin may be giving a payback for the assassination attempts. We have sun troubles, or at least that's what they're telling us. And there are other little cosmic signs showing up. Hi, Larry. How are you doing?
Hello, Stuart. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. Glad you could be with us tonight. What is this business with Egypt and Obama? That kind of bids ill for the United States. Or am I reading that wrong?
No, Stuart, I think you're reading that correctly. What had happened, the UN was preparing to move forward on a vote on a anti-Israel resolution that Egypt had stood behind, El-Sisi being the leader of Egypt. And at the last minute, Netanyahu had contacted Obama and got nowhere with Obama, and Obama was planning on an abstention vote, which is basically an abstention in saying, that's really a yes vote. I mean, only foolish people know better than that, But what's interesting is at the last minute, Trump came out and said that's a no-go. And El-Sisi in Egypt backed out, said, I will not do it. And he backed out of the deal. And he was the one that was behind the resolution vote. And Obama, according to the information coming out, especially on Fox News, pushed the issue today in the UN Security Council, pushed the vote forward and abstained, of course, and they passed the resolution against Israeli settlements and et cetera. And they was talking about this earlier. Israel is just literally outraged because this literally makes any Jewish citizen of Jerusalem an outlaw, illegal. It's illegal for them to be in Jerusalem. And remember what Obama said when he was in Israel last time? He said Jerusalem doesn't belong to Israel. And I guess now he's moved forward on that, and they've passed that resolution.
Well, evidently he doesn't read his Bible either, or he'd know that that's probably not the smartest move. Jerusalem is the apple of the Lord's eye. You screw around with Israel too much. And I know people don't really understand who Israel is. They think she is a thorn in the side, so to speak, of the entire world. And as Zechariah, I believe it is, says that even though the whole world come against Israel, it's not going to work. And this is, I think, what we're watching prophetically. I wanted to read some scripture here because people don't like Israel, and there's a reason why they don't. It may not even be conscious, but this is probably why. He's speaking about Israel in Jeremiah, and he says, Thou art, speaking about Israel, my battle axe and weapons of war. For with thee will I break in pieces the nations, and with thee will I destroy kingdoms, and with thee will I break in pieces the horse and his rider, and with thee I will break in pieces the chariot and his rider. With thee also will I break in pieces man and woman, and with thee will I break in pieces old and young, and with thee I will break in pieces the young man and the maid. I will also break in pieces with thee the shepherd and his flock, and with thee will I break in pieces the husbandman and his yoke of oxen, and with thee will I break in pieces captains and rulers, and I will render unto Babylon. Obama, whether you like it or don't like it, folks, is the king of Babylon. and to all the inhabitants thereof, for the evil that they have done in Zion. So, I guess Obama ought to read that. I know he won't, because he hates the Bible, and he hates the Christians, and obviously hates the Jews. So where does that leave us, Larry? I think that leaves us in a very bad spot.
Well, what's interesting, Stuart, is the fact that less than 24 hours ago, I shared with you earlier today, I had a most incredible dream that I couldn't even have thought up. I dreamed that the archivers, something named the archivers, that was their name given to me during the dream. I saw them come down from above, and they were some type of, appeared to be spiritual beings. As far as I could tell, they didn't look, they looked human-like, but not human. And they came down. They were the archivers, and whatever your mind said, whatever you thought you said, you know, anything that happened, it was automatic. They uploaded what occurred. And I thought to myself, Stuart, after I talked to you, I said, what in the world would I dream about something like the archivers? And then I thought, well, that sounds a little like the man with the inkhorn in symbology. But in 24 hours, unknown to me, we had an incident where the President of the United States of America, in other words, Obama, in the name of America, in other words, the authority of America, the name of America, declared war on God's word to Israel, where Israel is given this authority and this jurisdiction over a geographical area, and he says, I'll nullify that. I come against it. And so he drew a sword, a verbal sword, a voting sword in the UN, and struck the apple of God's eye. Now, what should be really telling to God's people is if you know your Bible and you know the precedents of the Word of God, when any leader of a nation does it in the name of that nation, everyone residing as a citizen of that nation is guilty.
Yes. Yep, and that's one thing I don't think the American people understand at all. They are going to be the ones held accountable. We could have impeached Obama I don't know how many times for his activities, and he just gets more and more lawless as time goes on. But the American people, just like they did in Roe versus Wade and abortions, you know, and all that good stuff, so that we can murder our young ones with impunity. And the Lord is up there tallying up the death rate. And, you know, it's just, I don't think people understand what's coming. And judgment from the Lord is more horrendous than anything anybody can imagine. And, you know, it's I don't know. I mean, this is why I read what I read, because Israel is a dilemma to the world. Israel is an enigma to the world. Nobody really understands Israel because they don't really, I don't think, read what the scriptures have to say about Israel. I call it pre-tribulational Israel. We're watching something that was set up by the rich men of the earth. It's basically Illuminati-based. They are at war most of the time with Christians themselves. And this thing is only going to go from bad to worse. God is behind it. And like he says, I'm going to make Israel a trembling cup to the world. And lo and behold, here it is. And who's the fellow that does all that work, that when we do something like this against Israel, we should be struck, should we not, within a couple of days?
Yeah, that's Bill Koenig. Bill Koenig and another guy, I can't remember his name, wrote some books about that. Eye for an eye, or eye to eye, or something like that. In other words, when we do that, in a short time, historically, we've been struck. And now this is what's interesting, Stuart, is I've been listening to some of the Fox commentators today that were just in shock that this occurred, because this was supposed to have been stopped. and actually Trump had come out against this and the UN doing this, and now they're warning that this is what's interesting is the fact that Netanyahu has also already come out in public, made a speech in Israel and declared that Israel will not adhere to this UN resolution, period. And so basically Netanyahu has drawn a line in the sand, and what the commentators were indicating was said, well, one of the first things right after the inauguration, of course, if that occurs, Trump will literally go to war with the UN because he has made a declaration already that he will change things. He's already sent the UN a directive that he was coming in to change things. And so there were some that were saying, could he possibly just simply cut off all funds to the UN? And you know, we're seeing a historical time because this is almost like the most quick-moving chess game anyone could imagine. The pieces are moving 24/7, and we can't even keep up with the movement hardly.
I know, it's amazing. And as far as the UN goes, I've always been amazed that the American people, who by and large, as I have said before, send their sons and daughters off to war to get killed, maimed, and butchered, and yet allow a communist, Marxist, socialist entity called the United Nations to be on American shores. It is so contradictory. And, of course, the UN Charter is a communist charter. And this is what Trump is actually coming up against, which only adds to his troubles. What's the latest on the war that Trump is having with major media? I know you follow a lot of that. It just seems that it never ends.
Yeah, it's not going to end. It's continuous. It's 24/7 there. Also, a war against Trump by the mainstream media. And what's so interesting too here, and we'll just mention this, and I'd like your comment, is you know, the last few days there's been some mysterious reports of military flyovers over Manhattan by C-130s and helicopters. And now we find that the military is actually doing drills for the emergency relocation of Trump and his family and his advisors, ex-our government, and it's an emergency relocation planning mission that is being done by the military, and that makes me think about all the generals that are surrounding Trump, and I can begin to see why now.
Well, it's also very, very interesting that they feel the need. This is unprecedented, as I understand it, which is an indication Trump is not going to move to Washington. He's going to stay in New York. Or is he? Has he got any latest on that? I had heard he was going to just run out of his office. You know.
I don't know, Stuart. You know, Trump's administration is almost like a movie where you're watching the rebel forces. It reminds you of Star Wars a little bit. The rebel forces and the Federation that's still in power and they're fighting, and it just reminds me so much more of the Game of Thrones. It doesn't stop. It don't matter if there's an election. It don't matter if the electors finally vote. It never stops. And a lot of the pushing this is mainstream media, the left. Of course, behind the scenes there is the rich men, and this is ongoing, and it just simply doesn't even slow down. I've never seen anything like this time, I guess.
Well, isn't it a little bit unprecedented that the UN would, or the United States, I should say, would cast a vote contrary? It's really very contrary to Israel. And, you know, they keep saying that this is all occupied territory. The last time that I checked it out, if you were attacked by an enemy and you fought back and you won territory, that was yours. That's the price you paid for being an idiot and attack the Lord, because that's really what they're doing. And it's like the Arabs never learn anything. How many times have they attacked and lost? And they cannot, for whatever reason, see the hand of the Lord, even though Israel is anti a lot of stuff and does a lot of things they should never do. But what did I just read? He allows Israel to do things that really get the world totally furious, and that's how he uses Israel. And it's designed to bring the nations of the world down, which is why I believe unconsciously people hate Israel, because they do not understand what Israel is there for, why God is doing what he's doing. And, the whole thing, if you understand it, makes perfect sense. And it does also make perfect sense that Obama, being who he is, would actually do this. But this is unprecedented. Yeah. This has never happened before, has it?
No. They've said that this is absolutely a historic vote away from the foreign policy the United States has had for years, to stab in the back one of our closest allies. I mean, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm going to say, well, the people in Texas and the southern borders in California better watch out, because since Obama's so busy trying to give back all of the captured lands, that Israel has captured during wars, we had a war with Mexico, and we kept a huge portion, really, of Mexico, what was Mexico, and one of those was California. So maybe Obama in the last few weeks will give all of that back to Mexico.
Well, nothing would surprise me. He might even deed planet Earth to the Martians. I mean, you just don't know what Obama's going to do next. But here's a headline. Israel accuses Obama of anti-Israeli shameful move at the United Nations. UN Security Council passes resolution on Israeli settlements, and then they go on to say Jewish settlements on Palestinian territory. Since when? If you fought a war, you won it.
That's it. And not only that, Stuart, this land is Israeli. This was Jewish land. As they were saying, they lived in Jerusalem for thousands of years.
Well, I think what this boils down to is people should read where the actual territorial lines are for ancient Israel, and they would then understand what's really going on. But, this thing is going to become such a thorn in the side that I believe we're watching Jeremiah's prophecy of the breakup and the destruction of the nations. And this is probably one of the first big moves that has occurred. Now, it almost seems like Obama doing all this stuff in the back of his mind might still be around to continue carrying out this.
Yeah, that's the latest really interesting anomaly that's occurring politically around Washington, is that one time he was working on a move to California, and then they said then he canceled that and is staying around Washington. And there are reports now in the background that he's making a move to work and reform the Democratic Party. And as you well know, if you've watched the news closely, the Democratic Party is literally going Islamic. Their next leader that they're moving forward to work with is a radical Islamic. And so, the interesting thing is maybe Obama can finally quit trying to pretend that he's a Christian, and really, actually the fruit that he bears out is he hates Christians, he hates Jews, and I call that very anti-Israel, anti-Christian. I'm not going to go any further with that right now, but maybe he can really become what he always has been.
Well, he did say that when push came to shove, he would always back the Islamics, and he would not back Israel, and he would not back the Christians. And he's now showing his true colors. And for the life of me, I've never been able to understand why even the pundits can't figure out who Obama really is. I mean, how many times does he have to say something or do something before it even penetrates their skulls that this guy is not in America's best interest. He was sent here to destroy. You remember that old prophecy that came, that was way back in 1912, was it? The Kenyan prophecy? About how this guy would come in, a son of Kenya, and literally destroy the United States.
That's right. That's right.
Remember that?
Yes,
I wanted to get back to your archivers. This is a fascinating dream.
What's so fascinating, Stuart, is I had it with less than about 24 hours before this event with the UN and Israel and Obama.
So it's kind of like the Lord is showing you that the real truth of who Obama is and who the left is. Well, they call themselves progressives. I don't know why they can't label themselves as Marxists and communists, because that's what they are. But it's just odd. Now, what did these archivers do? They took down all the information, but did they release it? Or didn't you get that far in the dream?
No, they didn't take the information down. What I saw was it appeared they uploaded. In other words, when the archivers came down suddenly, they uploaded everything. I mean, it was like there was nothing hidden. Everything was uploaded, and didn't matter whether you wanted to hide it, not think about it. In other words, it was uploaded. Whatever was there was uploaded in that instant, and you could not change anything. You couldn't pretend.
Wow. Well, it's probably a good thing it's not revealed, although the Lord did say he was going to reveal everything that was hidden, and I think we're watching that. I mean, Trump has definitely revealed the total corruption of the media, of Washington, of the evil behind all of this. And what's the latest on this Pizzagate business? I understand there's more coming out through WikiLeaks. This pedophile stuff.
That's what I'm hearing, but of course, there's been this has been going on for a long, long time. I mean, this is nothing at all new. All it is just being revealed, and I think it's part of it. And as you well know, a lot of the leadership of Washington will be right there in it.
Well, the bots did get into that, and they said it was going to be the revelations of that were also likewise going to trigger the revelations about Antarctica and the stuff that's going on in Antarctica. And that reminds me again of your archivers, because there's no question the Bible teaches an arrival, just like there was an arrival back in the days of Noah. And these guys pose as planetary visitors when they're actually not at all. They come from another dimension, and they just pull the wool over everybody's eyes, and we can certainly see that coming. But have you heard any more on Antarctica at all?
That has got really incredibly quiet, and ever since we started talking about it on the radio. And, we saw some of the data, but what's interesting is I'm looking forward to seeing possibly some Bible codes on that down the road. They may be very revealing, and we'll see. We'll just watch and see. But for the moment, it's very quiet over that area, news-wise.
Kind of like maybe everybody was told to shut up, do you suppose?
It reminds me of one of those instances, and we've seen them. One of the instances where people wouldn't talk about the subject. Was of course your Tithonia. It's almost just like that. It becomes a non-event, not because it's not real, but because they call it fake, and they close the mouths of all of those that would speak.
Wow. I was looking for something here on the email, but it vanished. Oh, here it is. There's a new code out by Luis Vega. You're familiar with him, I think. Maybe.
No.
He says it's called the Trump Code. A Bible Code Matrix of End Time Prophecy. It's got the year 2016. Trump wins president. Something about Hillary. Then war. Then he will be shot. Crosses Donald. War again. And then it says days of distress. Donald an assassin.
Wow.
Now that is kind of worrisome.
Well, you know, Stuart, the code that Glazerson and those were doing, that had similar wordings in it, and that was a very trustworthy code, and that's why the prayers came out when they did, because it had a date involved, and it also had a man's name. I'm not able to release all of that because they haven't released the code. But I understand what you're saying, and you're right. And troublesome would be a word, and distress would be a terrible time. People really need to have their houses in order. We don't know where this is all going, and Obama's not gone yet.
Well, yeah, exactly. And even if he does go, who he represented, I don't know exactly how Donald is going to take over all of this when you've got such an entrenched communist, Marxist entities all over the United States, even in your townships, even in your small towns. They're buying into this United Nations stuff, which is communist to the core. And it's evidently either they don't realize it or they're traitors, one or the other, I would think. But getting back again, I keep referring back to this deal with Egypt and the betrayal of Israel and a payback. Now, if I remember right, the Lord generally paid back within a couple or 3 days, right? In most of those instances.
Yeah.
Okay. What about this solar stuff that's going on? I was just reading a news article, and I think it's from one of the science places, and they were talking about something really big coming our way.
Well, we've got the coronal hole in the sun right now, and actually a flare shot out of that, and we've got that flare impacting, and then we're going to continue, they say, to receive this stream of charged particles coming out of the sun through December the 26th, which I find an odd date because there's also a word about some type of energy wave coming in about December the 26th. And, I don't know, we could have a cosmic event of some kind.
Well, that would certainly be payback, wouldn't it not?
Well, you got a point there. Absolutely.
So here's another headline. Are aliens trying to contact Earth? 6 new mysterious blasts of radio energy are now detected from deep space. They come from 3 billion light years away, and there are 11 previously recorded outbursts from the same location. The origin of the radio energy remains unknown, but it could be a young neutron star. Now, I got involved in this Cygnus V404 Cygni explosion. You remember that, with the black holes orbiting each other and gobbling up stars, I guess, as well as each other. And huge explosions coming from there. Now, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, this is not what Dr. Paul LaViolette was warning us about, correct? This is another area of the galaxy where this is coming from, that's supposed to arrive December 26th. Now, I haven't heard any more about it, So I don't know. Now the guy, this Mike from around the world or whatever, you never quite know what's real, what isn't, what's information, what's disinformation. But he evidently was absolutely correct when he said in October one of the first lighter waves would hit, and that they now know that another wave is coming and it'll hit on the 26th. And here we have the sun acting up and throwing an outburst our way about the same period of time. Don't you find that maybe a little odd? And does that not maybe a payback? I mean, if we're going to do this to Israel, why wouldn't God betray the United States?
Well, that's an interesting thought, and something I thought of too. If whatever this is really striking the earth, not only is it striking the earth or coming through past the earth, it's also striking our whole solar system. And maybe what some of the sun is doing is being generated by this.
I believe it is. That's what Dr. Paul LaViolette talks about. He says we're entering into a major dust cloud, and as long as the solar wind that radiates off the sun, and it kind of causes a bubble around the entire solar system and protects us. But the sun is going into kind of a quiescent period of time, and these protons or positrons or whatever they are, gamma ray bursts that are coming from that big hole in the sun, that's not the same thing, as I understand it, as a CME, correct? I mean, a CME is a...
Yeah, you're correct.
Yeah,
a CME generally is a coronal mass ejection of charged plasma and radiation, where the coronal hole usually releases its atmospheric energetic protons that stream toward the earth, and they're both different.
Mm-hmm. Well, something is happening to the people all over the world. I mean, we've talked about this, how they seem to be getting restless, and I've noticed personality changes in people. They don't notice it, but you can definitely notice it. Changes in habits, changes in the way their behavior is, touchiness, road rage. I mean, we're having all kinds of weird stuff starting to develop, and I'm beginning to wonder if these waves that are coming through aren't triggering this mental activity. What do you think?
Well, that's got a dual side to it. It's really interesting because on one hand, we know about some things that are coming that they're even claiming may change DNA, which would just literally change people to something else. But on the other hand, too, we're seeing supernatural changes to the human psyche, which is really, it's like a paradigm shift even of thinking. It's almost like, humanity, normal humanity, literally going into the abyss or going over the deep end. So you've got a natural side and a supernatural side, and it seems to be happening simultaneously.
Well, we do know that the Lord, generally speaking, intervenes via nature. He can intervene via hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanoes. This is how he operates. But we never really thought about the fact that he could intervene immensely through the propagation of gamma ray bursts and cosmic wave activity and gravitational waves, which that is global, it's worldwide, it would happen suddenly, and I haven't heard any more about this December 26th, but it just seems odd that we're getting all these little articles now coming from the science departments that the sun is going to throw off stuff and it's going to get here, like you were saying, right around the same period of time. So is this a cover story possibly for what is really coming? Well,
that's certainly possible, Stuart. We do know that, it's like this Planet Nine thing that it's a smoke cover or a cover for, something other than what's normal in our solar system. They've come up with a new theory using an old black and white movie, Planet Nine. I mean, it's very possible that a cosmic event story about the sun or about something else could cover something else that's coming that they already know for a fact. And, we've talked about gravity waves. They finally come out and admitted those, and we even see evidence of them testing gravity waves and even going to try to use them.
Well, mankind's ingenious, as it said there back in Genesis. Whatsoever he imagines to do, that can he do. It's just that we are like little babies. We'd pick up a stick of dynamite just as quickly as we would a candy bar. We're that kind of stupid or naive or whatever. When you start tampering with God's natural universe, you really better know what you're doing, I would think. What's going on in Russia before we run out of time? What's this with Putin? We have had two of his men assassinated. He's blaming NATO and the United States, right, as far as I've heard?
That's some of the talk coming him out of Moscow, and he says that they will respond, that Russia will respond to what has happened with the assassinations. Of course, they say this is ISIS, but they're also tying it back to the Muslim cleric here in the U.S. and Obama.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, we already know, Stuart, this sounds like more false flags, just like the so-called, coup against Erdogan. It seems that appears to also possibly been a false flag by the U.S. and NATO. Yes. And so we're just seeing this over and over and over.
It seems to be that whatever happens has a tendency at the end of it to bring forward more globalism, more controls, and a new world order. That's, no matter what it is, they steer it that way. And, by the way, disarming the American people. They're big on that sort of thing. So what do you think Putin's going to do? I'm kind of curious because, he's been unusually quiet.
Well, he's been fairly quiet, except with dialogue right now between him and Trump, and the news media is going nuts over that. Even Trump the other day came out and said, "Well, I think I'm going to work on making better nukes for the U.S." And the mainstream media has gone nuts, and they're saying this is going to bring a war, but they're not even saying what Putin's reply was. And Putin's reply to what Trump had just said about getting better nukes for the U.S., Putin's reply was that, well, that's not unusual. I mean, no big deal.
Well, we know from biblical prophecy that Russia is one of the chief architects of taking out the United States. They also get paid back. And so I'm just wondering, with all these paybacks that Putin's threatening and probably will do, and possibly a payback from the Lord of either a cosmic wave coming through. Oh, by the way, cosmic waves and all of that make increases in earthquakes. What in the world is going on with Mount St. Helens? Hundreds of quakes out there.
Yeah, they're having earthquake swarms under Mount St. Helens, and very few are telling about it. Very few are talking. And, of course, I know that in your interview that you had your exclusive with Red Elk, he was very straightforward in telling you that Mount St. Helens will explode again.
Oh, yeah, he was adamant about it. And, it was kind of interesting because he was so explicit as to what it was going to do. He said when it blows, it's going to be far, far worse than the one we had. But it's going to be on the Pacific side this time, not on the land side. But it's going to blow basically its whole top. And he also said that up and down that whole chain As you know, Mount Rainier is a really deadly volcano, and he claimed Mount Rainier was going to blow too. In fact, it was going to blow so hard that it blew the whole top of the mountain off. It was kind of interesting to listen to him. Wow. But he was very, very certain, very, very clear that this was coming. As he said, the invasion of the United States was coming. As he said, starvation in America was coming. And that, the government had gone utterly corrupt. And he didn't mention Trump, so I don't know exactly what role Trump will play beyond what he's already going to play, which is obviously the Sanhedrin, the Third Temple, and the Commonwealth of Israel. Bring it back to the old biblical standards. Any other news that you have that we should cover before we close out for the night?
Well, we might mention this strategy of Obama's leading from behind. China is now reportedly moving surface-to-air missiles out of China to those string of islands they've reconstructed, and they're just taking over that region basically with missile forces. And, of course, Trump's not in office, so Obama's watching this happen, and China's moving arms. So, Trump's going to have a handful when he gets there.
If he does get there. Hopefully he does. I'm a little bit concerned about this Bible code with that I read to you. He will be shot, assassin, day of distress, and it just makes you wonder, because that's not the first code that's come out with that. You've seen others. And Donald in America, I think, what do you think? I think we're in the most dangerous period of time that the United States has ever seen.
Oh, I think you're right. I think this is far more strategic and threatening than even the. And I was, I through the Cuba deal. You did too. And what's interesting, Stuart, too, and I'd like your opinion real quick. I know we're running out of time, but they keep referring to Donald Trump as JFK-like, and you wonder, is that a warning?
Yeah, I think it is. He is JFK-like in a lot of ways. I don't know. John was different, and, they had to get rid of him. And these people, I don't think the American people realize it yet, that these people are ruthless. They have a plan. They have an agenda. And people like Donald Trump, unless he's part of the agenda, are going to be done away with. And so likewise, probably his whole family. And I was wondering, I saw that there was an altercation with, what was that, Donald's daughter at an airport? I thought they were covered by Secret Service.
I'd have no idea. Maybe the president-elect's family's not covered. I don't know, and when he becomes president, they are. But his family's really, it's a dangerous situation for the whole family. That was Ivanka that had the problem on the plane.
Well, the other thing is that I had read, I don't know whether it's true or not, that he had hired mercenaries, about 300 or 400 of them, to come into the United States for his protection. So I think they are planning for definite war, even if it's an internal ruler against ruler. Yeah.
Exactly.
How do they reach you, Larry?
The quickest way is my blog, LarryWTaylor.org. That's LarryWTaylor.org.
Okay. So I'll reiterate what I opened with on my notice for the radio. While it may seem quiet, odds are behind the scenes that it is anything but. Thanks for listening, folks, and we'll see you again soon. Have a Merry Christmas and holiday. Night.